Hello, this is Paranormal Girl. I'm going to talk about the mysterious race of giants called the Nephilim. The book of Genesis contains some of the most famous origin myths in the Western culture. God's creation of the heavens and the earth. Adam and Eve eating the forbidden fruit in the Garden of Eden. And God commanded Noah to collect 2 of every animal to survive the great flood. But hidden amongst these better known stories is a more intriguing and somewhat confounding account of fallen angels and a race of superhuman giants roaming the earth. The whole wild story is contained in just 3 verses at the start of Genesis chapter 6 in the King James Version. And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, and the sons of God saw the daughters of men, and that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came unto the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. The same became mighty men, which were the men of old men of renown. In the original Hebrew, the term of these giants and the mighty men was better known as the Nephilim, which is derived from the Hebrew nephal, meaning to fall. In that sense, this race of giants born of unholy unions between divine sons of gods and mortal daughters of men are better translated as the fallen ones. While the giant Nephilim are barely mentioned in the Genesis narrative, they were the subject of great fascination in latter literature, especially in the book of Enoch. In that text, which didn't make it into the Bible, was a group of lusting angels, who conspired to sleep with human women, giving birth to a race of giants that spoilt God's creation so completely that he had no choice but to send the flood waters and wipe earth clean. Scholars today say that there were 2 possible reasons why the Genesis account of the Nephilim was so short. It's either a much longer story that got truncated in the text, or it was so common of the story of the authors of Genesis didn't even bother to write down the whole story, says a Kevin Sullivan, the religion professor of the Illinois Wesleyan University, who specializes in ancient Jewish and Christian mysticism with a focus of angels and demons. Across the ancient Near East and Mediterranean world, there were long-standing myths of gods falling in love with human women and spawning god-men of superhuman size, strength, and power. In ancient Greek mythology, for example, Zeus fathered the hero Hercules in the Roman myth, from a tryst with the beautiful human Alcmene. These demigod figures, well known to the ancient authors and readers of the Hebrew Bible, were the mighty men of old and the men of renown, referred to in the book of Genesis. And this short text provided a passing explanation of how they came to be. They're superhuman because they represent something that God never designed, says Sullivan. They're a hybrid between beings that should have stayed in heaven and beings that should have been on earth. The Nephilim are not divine in any sense, and they were headed back to heaven, so that they were a kind of trundle around earth as a weird kind of mix. The 3-verse Genesis account of the Nephilim only hints at the notion that the unions between the sons of God and the daughters of men were a transgression. But later Jewish writers ran with the idea and expanded the cast of characters to include a rebellious and sinful band of angels called the Watchers. In the text known as the Book of Enoch, which was likely written between 300 and 200 BCE, a group of 200 angels led by angel Semzaza hatched a plot to take wives from the beautiful and comely daughters of men. They know that what they were doing was a great sin, so they made a pact to follow through with it at all costs and to suffer the consequences together. The rebellious angels were called by the Aramaic word of Ayinrin, which is derived from the word meaning awake. Therefore, Iranian was sometimes translated as the awakened ones, but more often they were mostly called the Watchers, because their job as angels were to remain vigilant and to watch over mankind. Later in the Book of Enoch, even the loyal angels are called the Watchers, but the name is mostly associated with what we call the bad guys. In the Book of Enoch, the Nephilim begat by the Watchers, and the human women aren't the heroic men of renown of the Genesis book, but the great giants whose height were 3,000 ells, which is more than 3,000 meters, or better known as 9,840 feet tall. Now think of it. These beings were absolutely gigantic. In their insatiable hunger, the monstrous Nephilim ate all of mankind's food, and when the food ran out, they started eating men themselves. Now what actually happened was, these monstrous beings were so huge that they virtually ate the whole planet dry of all vegetation, all the roots, every possible form of food that they could get. Once that ran out, then they started to fight amongst themselves, and eventually they killed and ate one another. Not only do the Watchers bring these bloodthirsty giants into the world, but some of the fallen angels taught the women charms and enchantments, how to use roots and plants for sorcery, as well as how to make jewelry and makeup for beautifying of the eyelids. To the men, the Watchers teach how to fashion swords and knives and shields and breastplates. And there arose such godliness that mankind committed fornication, and that they were led astray and became corrupt in all manner of ways. And as the men perished, they cried, and as their cry went up to heaven, said the Book of Enoch. It is only then that God intervenes and tells the angels to warn Noah of the coming flood, intended to heal the earth that the angels had corrupted. God further commands his loyal angels to destroy all the spirits of the reprobate and the children of the Watchers, because they had wronged mankind. Destroy all the wrong from the face of the earth, and let every evil work come to the end. Now let's have a look at the leader of the Watchers. Semyaza was one of the leaders of the Watchers who came to cohabit with women. The name Semyaza can be translated into the name Aza or Uza, which in turn means strength. According to the Book of Enoch, Semyaza was the leader of the Watchers that became fallen angels because they were consumed with lust for the mortal women. And Semjaza, who was their leader, said unto them, I fear ye will not indeed agree to do this deed, and I alone shall have to pay the penalty of a great sin. And they all answered him and said, Let us all swear an oath, and all bind ourselves by mutual imprecations not to abandon this plan, but to do this thing. Then swear they all together and bound themselves by mutual imprecations upon it. Said the Book of Enoch, chapter 6, 3-5. This watcher is associated by Azazel or Azazel, according to the Zohar. He had an affair with one of the daughters of Eve and 2 sons, Hewa and Hiyah, who were then born. Each of these sons ate 1,000 camels, horses, and oxen daily. In the Book of Enoch, Semyaza was warned by the Archangel Michael about the sins committed by the Watchers. Shemyaza is the Watcher who taught humans root cuttings, sorceries, and enchantment. He is referred as the Luciferian witch father and initiator. He was a very powerful spirit with the power and knowledge of the explicit name of creation. Due to his knowledge, he was able to ascend into the spirit world at will. He fell in love with a maiden named Ishtar. He taught her the hidden name of God, or the mindless force of power, which is declared by the Jewish encyclopedia as Shem Ha Mem Forash. He taught her to use the words which enabled her to ascend as a goddess into the heavens. The abilities taught by the Watchers are symbolic. They were embedded within humanity during our evolution. This magical formula also serves as a symbol of self-transformation and mastery. So what are your thoughts on the giants? Well, what I will do is I will leave a link to another YouTube channel. His name is Roger Spurs. He's very famous for his mud fossil theory. Now, what I suggest you do is keep a very open mind. This man is very, very interesting, and he will open your eyes as to the bigger picture of these giants, or otherwise known as the men of renown. They did exist. There is great evidence of these monstrous beings, and if you follow what Roger says, like I said, keep an open mind, he will show you the bigger picture. And yes, it goes very, very deep. I'll leave you with that thought, and I'll leave his channel in the description below. Leave a comment about what you think the giants of the Nephilim were. I'll be very interested in your thoughts. Thank you for listening.